President Trump putting out a rapid-fire series of tweets this morning, touting the findings of the Department of Justice Inspector General's report and defending his summit with Kim Jong-un. Hello, everyone, and of course, happy Father's Day. This is America's News Headquarters. I'm Eric Shawn.
And happy Father's Day.
Thank you, Arthel.
I'm Arthel Neville. Well, President Trump slamming the media coverage of the summit while also defending his decision to halt military exercises with South Korea.
Garrett Tenney is reporting live. He's at the north lawn of the White House with the very latest on this. Hi, Garrett.
Eric and Arthel, good morning to you. Yeah, President is spending the day at Trump National Golf Course, but before he headed out, he spent some time on Twitter reposting some of his tweets from yesterday about the IG report and immigration, but also tweeting anew about North Korea and once again defending his decision to end the joint military exercises with South Korea as part of those negotiations, writing, "Holding back the war games during the negotiations was my request because they are very expensive and set a bad light during a good faith negotiation. Also, quite provocative. Can start up immediately if talks break down, which I hope will not happen." He also touted his agreement with Kim Jong-un, tweeting, "The denuclearization deal with North Korea is being praised and celebrated all over Asia. They are so happy. Over here in our country, some people would rather see this historic deal fail than give Trump a win, even if it does save potentially millions and millions of lives." Now, we should note that while the entire world is hopeful that North Korea will denuclearize and is at least taking steps in that direction, several of our allies, South Korea in particular, have expressed concern about the decision to end the joint military exercises. This morning, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon, though, said the president has been unfairly criticized back here at home for his meeting with Kim Jong-un and said Republicans are not doing enough to support him in those peace talks.
He didn't give up any sanctions. He got so many concessions from the North Koreans. And yes, there's some optics because he's trying to start a process that's going to end with a verifiable denuclearization of the peninsula. And it's going to take many, many years. And I don't know why he comes home and people do nothing but vilify him. And the Republican establishment doesn't have enough guts to come to these microphones this weekend and back him up as a guy that's trying to do something.
And President Trump was asked on Friday when he would be speaking to Kim Jong-un again and if it would be today on Father's Day. The president wouldn't say exactly when he plans to speak to Kim Jong-un, but he did say he does plan to speak to his team that is over in Asia meeting with our allies to discuss this negotiations that are very much ongoing. And he said he gave Kim Jong-un a very direct number so that he could contact him at any point moving forward. Arthel and Eric.
All right, Garrett, we'll wait to see if that phone call does come through. Thank you. Arthel?
Eric, and there are breaking developments on the immigration front as we are learning President Trump will head to Capitol Hill Tuesday to huddle with House Republicans on immigration legislation. There are two differing bills being proposed. One is moderate, one is more conservative. The bills already addressing issues like DACA and border wall funding. But now there are calls to change another immigration policy, that after the Department of Homeland Security said some 2,000 kids were separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border in April and May.
The president is ready to get meaningful immigration reform across the board. And Chuck, let me just tell you that nobody likes seeing babies ripped from their mother's arms. What the president is saying is if the Democrats are serious, they'll come together again and try to close these loopholes.
Jillian Turner is in Washington now with more. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, Arthel. At this moment, a congressional delegation of Democrats led by Rep. Gerald Nadler of New York have wrapped a tour of one of these detention facilities where children separated from their parents at the southern border are being held. This facility is in Elizabeth, New Jersey, just outside New York City. And during a press conference that's still unfolding, Nadler called the Trump administration's policy of family separation, quote, inhumane. He also pledged on Tuesday he'd bring his own legislative fix to the problem. In the meantime, Fox News confirms President Trump will head to Capitol Hill late Tuesday to rally Republicans around one of these two GOP immigration bills. On the agenda for the meeting is President Trump's big-ticket policy priority items, most notably border security funding, including his multi-billion-dollar request for the wall.
I do think this is a historic opportunity to advance a conservative agenda that we've been trying to do for the last 25 years to structurally change the way we do immigration and make it more merit-based.
But Chairman McCaul's Democratic colleagues are continuing to erupt in fury over the administration's separation policy.
This is inhumane. I'd like to say it's un-American, but it's happening right now in America.
I don't think Americans would like to see children 2 years old, 4 years old, torn away from their parents as a negotiating ploy in Washington, D.C. Using children, young children, as political foils is abhorrent.
Steve Bannon jumping to the president's defense this morning, telling ABC News the administration's, quote, zero-tolerance policy does not require any justification. Other administration insiders insist by enforcing this separation policy, the president's playing a long game. He hopes to ultimately force the Democrats' hand and increase the chances of reaching a broader compromise on immigration that'll curb illegal border crossings, something he firmly believes is in the best security interests of the nation. Arthel?
Jillian Turner. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you.
Eric?
And there's no reaction, Arthel, from that scathing report by the Justice Department's internal watchdog as the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, prepares to testify before lawmakers on Capitol Hill this week. He'll do that tomorrow and Tuesday. Here is Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy, who's chairman of the House Oversight Committee. That is one of the two panels that will question Horowitz.
Michael Horowitz proved what we wanted the FBI and the DOJ to do, which is that you can have an investigation that is fact-centric and fair and even-handed.
What will Horowitz tell the lawmakers? Ellison Barber now live from Washington with the latest on this. Hi, Ellison.
Hi, Eric. The 500-page report is separate from the Russia investigation. The Inspector General focused on the FBI's handling of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email, but two FBI employees working on the Clinton probe were also previously tied to the Russian. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok exchanged thousands of messages. In one newly released message, Page texted Strzok on August 8th, 2016 and said, quote, "Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?" Strzok responded, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Here's some of the reaction that we're hearing today from congressmen on Capitol Hill.
These text messages are very troubling. The fact they were on work email, the fact that they were commingled with emails discussing business, all that's problematic. Again, the IG concluded that none of this affected decision making, but nonetheless, that was completely inappropriate.
Everyone who's ever stood in front of a jury and had to explain it away will tell you it is the most miserable feeling in the world, and I have never seen this level of bias.
President Trump says the IG report totally exonerates him. His personal attorney seems to disagree, telling ABC, quote, "Well, I don't think it exonerates him. In some respects, it dramatically supports his position that the people who conducted the Hillary probe who were extreme partisan for Hillary and against Trump." Chairman Gowdy says if the DOJ and FBI fail to comply with outstanding subpoenas and turn over documents, they have requested that there will be action on the floor of the House this week. He told Fox News Sunday they would use their, quote, "full arsenal of constitutional weapons to gain compliance." Eric?
All right, Ellison, thank you. Arthel?
Well, Texas Republican Congressman John Ratcliffe, who serves on the House Judiciary Committee, is also preparing his questions for Inspector General Michael Horowitz on that internal report. Here's Mr. Ratcliffe earlier today on Sunday Morning Futures.
The IG report really tells us that the problems at the FBI and the Department of Justice were more pervasive and problematic than any of us realized. The second thing is it sadly confirms that even though Hillary Clinton should have been charged with mishandling classified information, she was never really in danger. The Inspector General report really provides a factual basis to call into question the legitimacy of all of the actions taken, all of the decisions made, and all of the evidence gathered in the first 9 months of the Trump-Russia investigation.
Tom Fitton is here. He is the president of Judicial Watch. Nice to have you, Tom. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
Okay, so did the focus of the IG report transition from Hillary Clinton's emails to becoming the impetus for the Mueller investigation?
Well, if you review the report, you'll recognize you can't separate the two, especially when you understand that Peter Strzok, who said he wanted to stop Trump from being president, was the lead FBI special agent on the Clinton email matter, and then moved over into the Russia investigation as well. Both investigations have been irredeemably compromised. It shows that the Clinton email issue needs to be reopened. And frankly, I don't understand why the Mueller operation is still going forward in light of these extraordinary details that we've been getting from people in his team. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were on the Mueller operation for a good period of time and set up a lot of the things that led to the special counsel being appointed. I don't understand why Mueller's still around. And frankly, we shouldn't have to wait for 2 more years for an IG to tell us the obvious, like he did about Mrs. Clinton, that the Mueller investigation was compromised as well.
How would you, in general, Tom, characterize the IG's report? If you were to give it a grade, you know, the A, B, C, D, E, F system, what would you give them?
Oh, I'd give it a C in the sense it got all the facts out, but it's a failure in terms of drawing the conclusions necessary to provide the political leadership reason to shut down the Mueller operation.
But what if there is no conclusion for that reason to
well,
lead
because
to
he failed. I think he made a political decision not to derail the Mueller operation by highlighting the fact that Peter Strzok made all these comments about President Trump, and all these other FBI agents made all these comments about President Trump, and this IG was not willing to say that compromised the investigation, despite the obvious conclusion that it did. So it's up to, frankly, the leadership of the Justice Department and FBI to step in here.
The conclusion did not say that, but let's keep going here, because I do want to keep asking you questions about FBI Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok, for the record, and FBI Special Counsel Lisa Page. Should they have been fired immediately?
Oh, they should have been criminally investigated. It looks to me like obstruction of justice might, in terms of the criminal charge of obstruction of justice, needs to be investigated as it relates to all of these FBI agents. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page are the only named. There are at least three or four others. Yeah. So we've got a serious issue at the FBI, and it's disappointing to see the FBI director come out and kind of just slough off the fact that you had this top leadership that was running these 2 key investigations exhibit such personal and animus against the president and in favor of Mrs. Clinton.
The report did say that Strzok, for instance, he didn't make any final decisions on the investigation.
Look, you can't separate the decision-making by the FBI agents in key areas, Russia and Clinton, with the result. And even the IG doesn't go there. He says there's no documentary evidence. But look, people should read it for themselves, and they'll draw their own conclusions.
But I mean, the whole reason for the IG report is to get information to provide to people like you. So now I'm hearing you say, yeah, he did the report, but he missed the boat. He should have had this in there. He put in there what he thought was important to be in there. Meanwall, I'll ask you, does there seem to be much condemnation of Hillary Clinton's emails in the IG's report? And did Page and Strzok damage the integrity of the entire Clinton email probe, as Mr. Horowitz writes? And was there a lot of condemnation against the Hillary Clinton and her use of her private server?
Well, the IG at least highlighted the potential bias in the handling of the Clinton Wiener laptop issue, where you had all these Clinton emails, including classified information that took Judicial Watch to uncover the specifics of on the Wiener laptop. And even the IG noted that...
And what's the bias there?
The bias is that they waited a month, perhaps because they were more eager to go after President Trump, or then candidate Trump, in September and October of 2016 than to reopen and rehash the Clinton email issue.
Well, again, does there seem to be much condemnation of that issue? I mean, that's what this was all about. Is there any there?
The IG reports, in my experience, are both cover-ups and exposés at the same time. There's a lot that's exposed. But in terms of these final conclusions, it's up to the leadership in the House and the Senate, and frankly in the DOJ and the FBI, to take action to make sure this doesn't happen again and get accountability. And that means putting a pause on the Mueller operation, because there's enough here.
Now, the FBI, FBI Director Christopher Wray did say he's going to be making changes. He's going to be making changes in terms of sensitivity training and procedural changes at the FBI. I want to stick here with the IG report, how you just mentioned a second ago, Tom, about the other 5 unnamed individuals who have been identified, including 2 agents and 1 FBI attorney who worked on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe until earlier this year, and who made, quote, statements of hostility towards then candidate and statements of support for candidate Clinton, and improperly mixed political opinions with case-related discussion. So I ask you, should the findings of the IG report render the Mueller investigation null and void?
Oh, I think the Mueller operation should be shut down for a variety of reasons, including the evident bias we've had. Look, Mueller knew, and the Justice Department knew back in August of last year, July, August of last year, about this Strzok Page issue with the political comments attacking President Trump. And now we're being told back in February they had reason to know that there was another agent or attorney involved in the investigation who also had it in for President Trump. How much bias do you have in a sensitive investigation before the investigation is seen as having zero credibility?
Do you really think that Special Counsel Mueller, I mean, you know him or know his work and his history, his pedigree. Do you think that he would allow any sorts of bias, political bias, to seep into his investigation? Because at the end of the investigation, once it does come out, it's his name, it's his reputation on the line, it's his factual evidence that's going to be questioned and judged.
Well, we know he's not been public and forthright about the bias in his investigation. He didn't tell anyone about the firing of Strzok and Page until it came out through congressional oversight. We're only finding out about the removal of this FBI lawyer 5 or 6 months after it happened. His number two at the on his prosecutorial team was an anti-Trumper who attended Hillary Clinton's election night party. It wasn't a victory night party, it turns out. I don't understand why we think that Mr. Mueller is any different than his protege James Comey in his approach to Donald Trump. I think he's as a political, an FBI director, and an operator as anyone else. He may be a bit more quiet about it, but the proof is in the pudding. He's got a biased team, and he's inherited, we now know he's inherited a terribly compromised investigation, and he's okay with it. Well, I'm not okay with it, and the American people shouldn't be okay with it.
Okay, well, next time we'll have someone who can speak for Mr. Mueller. I certainly can't, and we will leave it there. Tom Fitton, thank you. And by the way, I understand you're the father of 3 girls. Girls do rule, by the way, and you know it. Happy Father's Day.
Certainly in my house they do. Thank you.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you, Rafael.
Anyway, the Fox's alert for you now. 20 people have been wounded. This happened in a shooting at an arts festival in New Jersey, this occurring earlier this morning. One suspect, police say, is dead. 2 others are in custody. Here is the mayor of Trenton, Eric Jackson.
This is truly a tragedy for Trenton. I want to assure our residents and the many guests that come into our city that my office and the city of Trenton, my police department, and all the law enforcement agencies are taking this shooting extremely seriously.
Brian Yennis is live in Trenton right now with the very latest breaking developments on this. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Eric. Well, you're looking right now at a pretty active investigation scene right here. This is where the shooting happened at about 2:50 in the morning, an art all-night festival at a warehouse here in the historic portion of Trenton, New Jersey. That is the entrance to the warehouse where about 1,500 pieces of artwork were inside. This is, again, a 24-hour all-night art festival for the community. And then all hell broke loose, according to witnesses who were here at about 2:50 in the morning. Shots were fired. Now, investigators believe that this was a fight between individuals that then happened to break out into this venue here with this art all night festival. This is what we know about the injured. 22 people were hurt in this shooting last night. 17 people were wounded by gunshot. 4 people are in critical condition, including a 13-year-old boy who is said to be in, quote, extremely critical condition. Investigators are also now looking into whether or not a carjacking that happened after this shooting took place is involved in what happened. Take a listen.
We are also investigating what is purportedly an attempted carjacking that took place in the alleyway near Dye Street. 3 individuals were in a vehicle when a male came up to the vehicle in the aftermath of the shooting, and at that point may or may not have pointed a gun.
Again, police believe this was an argument between individuals. Right now, a 33-year-old male was shot dead. He is believed to be a suspect, and they believe police shot him. 2 other suspects are now in custody. This type of festival, there were about 1,000 people that were here at 2:50 in the morning, and now some of these artists are out here, and some of the victims have come out of the hospital, and they're here to lay down flowers and to see if they can actually get inside this warehouse that has been closed off to get their pieces of artwork back. The art in the festival actually released a statement. It says, quote, "We're very shocked. We're deeply saddened. Our hearts ache and our eyes are blurry, but our dedication and resolve to building a better Trenton through community, creativity, and inspiration will never fade. Not tonight, not ever." And again, the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, has just spoken just a few minutes ago, but he tweeted, quote, that that this is just another example as to why we must eradicate the scourge of gun violence from our communities. Right now, again, the only dead that we have right now is a 33-year-old male suspect. 2 are in custody, 22 hurt, and we had that 13-year-old who is all in our thoughts and prayers right now in extremely critical condition.
Absolutely. Brian, thanks so much. Martel?
And back to international affairs, as President Trump touting his historic summit with Kim Jong-un and defending his decision to suspend American military exercises with South Korea.
The president is fully committed to both of these bills. He has put the full weight of his office behind it. The McCall-Goodlatte bill, they both, I would say, provide the 4 pillars that I discussed with the president. And the 4 pillars being ending chain migration, ending this random visa lottery system, providing border security, and a DACA solution.
Well, House Republicans are set to meet with President Trump on Tuesday as the White House clarifies that the president will, in fact, sign either immigration bill that is currently under consideration. This after President Trump, as you know, said he would not support the more moderate of the two. Well, that brought the vote counting to a halt, but now he may sign either one. What will this mean? Let's bring in Ambassador Hugh Dugan, former U.S. delegate to the UN and senior advisor to 11 U.S. ambassadors. He's also director of the UN engagement and professor at Seton Hall University School of Diplomacy. Ambassador, good to see you.
Thank you, Eric.
So the president's going to go up to Capitol Hill on Tuesday.
Yes.
That is crucial. What do you expect will come out of that meeting?
Well, as you say, whichever bill comes forward, it's just another measure to try to repair a very, very complicated immigration policy this country has. The history of our immigration legislation makes the tax code read like a haiku poem. The immigration legislation is just a patchwork of special interests, fixes, stopgap measures that have built upon each other over time. And I'd say outright total immigration reform would be like trying to make a cashmere blanket out of a patchwork quilt.
So it really is complicated, but it seems now the president has potentially what he wants. $25 billion for the wall and other security. 1.8 million so-called dreamers. They get some pathway to legalization, either citizenship or legalization. You also have the end of the diversity lottery system and the so-called chain migration system with the families coming in. So do you see any stumbling block or obstacle here that they would actually be able to finally get this thing done?
I think Trump as businessman is going to take a deal and run with it. And I'm encouraged by that because whichever deal it is, he's going to market it. That's his tactic as a businessman, to acquire properties. In this case, it's the immigration issue, to talk them down a little bit, acquire them, improve them, and then market them to our values. So I expect this is the beginning of a change of tone in this country about immigration and its value for us in the long term.
So you actually see a deal perhaps forming this coming week?
Yes, I do. I think so. He's got just a few months left before the midterms, and this is the opportunity to strike before summer.
Now, you have personal experience in this. You worked at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, City?
Yes, I did.
What was that like?
I adjudicated visas. In fact, I sat at a window, much like a bank teller, with about 10 others, and we adjudicated hundreds of people's applications every day, people trying to come in legally as tourists or as immigrants. And it was a very challenging thing because we would have to assess whether or not they could, in fact, make the trip and return safely, and whether or not they were going to be staying in our country illegally. Now, this is why immigration is such a touchy topic, I believe, in our society. It really has a lot to do with jobs, but also it's about our law. We're, in fact, a country that believes in innocence before guilt. In our immigration law, we presume guilt before innocence. When the applicant comes to me, they have to show me that, in fact, they will not violate our law. They have to overcome a burden of guilt. That's the only part of our law that deals in that way.
Well, how do they do that? How do you know someone's not lying? I mean,
you don't. We ask for bank transcripts, for proof of employment back home, for ties that will bring them back to their country. If they have a lot of ties in the U.S. and if they don't have very much money to make their round trip, it's likely they'll stay there. So we have to make educated guesses. And on any given day, we would refuse about 60% of those applicants.
On what basis? They didn't. What would be a red flag to you as a representative of the United States government dealing with someone who wanted to say, "Oh, I'm coming up to visit the Statue of Liberty, and I want to visit Rockefeller Center"?
I know it's a challenging thing. You feel for these people, but if you can assess that their ties back home are very weak, they're not employed currently, they have family in the States, they may be single, which means that they're less obliged to come home and care for their family. So it's a guessing game in the end, and it's tragic. But the idea is that we want to issue visas to people to present themselves at the border. And this is another thing to understand. The visa is just permission to present yourself at the border for another interview. At that point, you're then assessed. If I felt somebody went all that way to the border and then was turned away, that would be a tragedy for that person and their family.
So, I mean, that really is you've got a professional responsibility and also, in some sense, a personal sense. Can you separate the two, or you would just basically decide on the merits? And if you felt someone you would not give a visa, what type of reaction would you get? Well,
we in fact adjudicate. So we sit, so to speak, as judges over each applicant's case. And in fact, my supervisor couldn't tell me to change my opinion. It's that type of a role that each adjudicator plays in assessing a visa applicant. And in the course of it, the visa applicant may return the next day and seek out a different officer on the visa line.
Oh man, playing the judge game.
It can get to that.
And finally, quickly, do you think we're doing enough now on that level to properly assess the people who want to come here?
Our State Department manpower to deal with visas was designed in the early 60s, and the demand has grown so much over that time that we've had to take many of our officers who would otherwise be doing economic.
The parents at the border, and that is stirring up quite a controversy of outrage and anger from some. Well, now Fox News is getting an inside look at one of these shelters. It is in a former Walmart that is located just outside of El Paso, Texas. Jeff Paul now has more on About This from Los Angeles. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah, Eric, two different congressional delegates are heading to the border to investigate and tour facilities that right now are housing migrant children who've been separated from their parents. One group is heading to the Texas border with Mexico today, and another is set to visit detention facilities here in California on Monday. Now, the children are being separated from their parents as part of a zero-tolerance policy enacted by the Trump administration in April. Migrant adults who are found illegally crossing into the U.S. are now sent into the criminal justice system immediately, as opposed to previous catch-and-release policies. If they have children, their kids are then taken from them and turned over to Health and Human Services custody, where they're cared for while their parents await prosecution. Attorney General Jeff Sessions insists it's about enforcing the law, but Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, who's visiting the Texas border this afternoon, says it's a, quote, cruel new policy by the Trump administration that goes against historical American ideals.
But now we have a whole new message to those fleeing persecution. And the story now is, if you come fleeing oppression, you wash up on the shores of the United States, you'll be arrested as a criminal, you'll be put in a prison, your children will be taken away from you.
An HHS spokesperson also confirming other locations for additional temporary housing units are also being considered, but what they wouldn't elaborate on whether some of those new facilities would be more like tent cities. HHS says there'll be soft-sided structures with AC, but didn't release any other details. Now, Senator Merkley said in that press conference yesterday that the problem goes beyond the U.S.-Mexico border. He and other members of the Democratic delegation met with those seeking asylum from countries all over the world, claiming religious and political persecution from places like China, Nepal, and India, all of whom he said
a better picture of what these bills need in order to get passed.
I think when people see that this is a good, solid conservative bill that unites our party and addresses an issue we haven't been addressing in a long time, we have a great prospect of passing it.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton joins me now. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Mr. Attorney General, I want to start by getting your personal reaction to these 1,995 children being held in these detention centers.
You know, obviously, just like all of our immigration policies, there's certainly a lot of room for improvement. This is something that hopefully Congress will address soon. Right now, the administration has a difficult problem. They have a law that they're supposed to enforce, and they're doing it.
Okay, and I'm going to get to that. But we're hearing so many different reports. But you're there, sir. What are the conditions of these centers, and how are the children being treated?
You know, I think you talk to Border Security, you talk to Customs and Enforcement. The people down there are doing their best, given a difficult situation of large numbers of people coming to the border and having to deal with young children and all children. So it's obviously a difficult issue for those people to have to deal with.
Yeah, and how are the agents doing? I mean, you just said it's got to be tough on them as well.
Well, I was down there a little over a week ago. I was in Laredo talking to Border Patrol, and look, they have a tough job. They have to deal with issues as they come, and I think they're doing the best job they can given the circumstances that we put them in.
How do you think this crisis should be resolved?
Well, I am hopeful that Congress will address not just this situation, but all of border security and immigration issues. We have a horrible problem in Texas of immigration that's causing crime. We've had over 1,200 homicides over the last 5 or 6 years. We've had many crimes committed by illegals. So I want to see all kinds of issues addressed. I'd love to see DACA addressed. I'd love to see this issue of parents being separated from their children addressed. And I'd certainly love to see border security, wall, more border agents, and technology used to protect our people in Texas.
So you touched on several points. And as you know, President Trump is willing to sign off on a proposal, an immigration proposal that has bipartisan support, as long as American taxpayers pay for his border wall and catch and release, family migration, and the visa lottery are ended and merit-based immigration is implemented. Do you think, Mr. Paxton, that this current immigration crisis should be used as a bargaining chip?
Well, it's just the way it is. I mean, everybody has their side of this issue, and I'm hopeful that Democrats and Republicans can come together. My fear is that the Democrats don't really want to solve this issue right now. They love to use this as an election issue. Unfortunately,
but that could backfire on them if that's the case.
Well, I think it could as well, because you're talking about, harming potentially children and other people that they claim that they care about. So I'm hopeful that they'll come to the table. You never get everything you want. The president's not going to get everything he wants. The Democrats are not going to get everything they want. The Republicans are not get everything they want. This is about negotiating a solution that's best for America.
Well, do you feel that they're close to getting there? Yes or no? They being in the lawmakers in Washington.
Yeah, I'm always optimistic and hopeful, but Congress has obviously struggled to get much of anything good done. Now, look, they got a tax bill done at the end of the year, so I am hopeful that they will address this. This is an issue that should be addressed soon, obviously.
Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General. Happy Father's Day.
Hey, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Eric?
Well, Arthel, now that the handshake is out of the way, the hard work is going to begin to try and denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. But critics are saying today that the president should not have called out or off those joint military exercises with South Korea. But the president is firing back at his critics.